Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Yejia, and today I'm going to be crocheting some matching fits for my best friend and I to wear to North Coast Festival, which is like a rave EDM festival this weekend. This is my top, and this is my best friend's top. Okay, video done. I'm just kidding. So basically we brainstormed, we ideated together, right? Because obviously we're going together, we need matching fits. I'm crocheting our tops. Why did I leave this to the very last minute? Because North Coast Festival is in like 3 days, so I really only have like 2-3-ish days to make this. I don't know. Basically, it's gonna be this halter neck cross wrap top like this. And then at the neckline, I'm gonna attach a little hoodie as well, make it real Dune aesthetic, you know? I've never seen Dune, and I don't even know if she has seen Dune, but we landed on this aesthetic. We were like, I don't know, it looks cool. I think that the top, construction-wise, is like fairly straightforward. Let me show you what I'm doing. I figured that a corset back would probably be the best in terms of like getting it to size properly on my best friend, because I made her take her own measurements and send them to me. Also, I just want to show you how comical it is, the difference between our boob panels. Are you really best friends if your chest sizes are not dramatically different from one another? A couple of the modifications that I want to make to this original draft pattern is that this side panel, it actually ended up being a little bit too long. Because with a corset back, you want this panel to be a little bit short so you can actually get the effect of it being laced in and cinching yourself in. Okay, let me switch POVs so that you can see what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. So as you can see, I'm just working up half double crochet through the third loop. Let me show you how to do that. So you're going to want to take the measurement around your bust, like basically from like your armpit to covering one of your boobs. That's the measurement that you want. For myself, I needed like about 6 inches, and this is just over 6 inches. I'd say it's like 6 1/4, which is perfect for me. So you're going to want to start off with this sort of length that allows you to cover one of your boobs fully, and we are going to start off with a slip knot. So go ahead and twist, pull up your yarn, and then you're going to chain, you know, however many that is for you. For myself, I started with 35 chains, but this is just me showing you an example. For myself, I started with 35 stitches. With this specific stitch work, we are going to use 2 turning chains every row. And all that means is that you're gonna chain an additional 2 chains that you are not going to work into. So for instance, right now I've got 12 chains right here. So it's like, imagine that this is 35. And then you are going to yarn over once on your hook, and then you're gonna skip the first 2 chains from your hook. You're gonna work into the 3rd chain from your hook. But I'm gonna be working into the backs, or the back loops of my chains. And then you're gonna yarn over and pull up, yarn over and pull through all the loops on your hook. And then again, you're just going to create half double crochet stitches all the way down the back loops of your chains. Once you've reached the end of your row, you are going to chain 2. So chain 2, turn your work. And again, those are your turning chains, meaning you're not going to work into those 2 chains. But now we're going to work into the 3rd loop only. If you look at the anatomy of your stitches, the 3rd loop is in reference to this like front loop right here that's kind of stacked right here. So as you can see, this is where we are inserting our hook. And then again, you just work your half double crochet stitches just like usual through that 3rd loop only. I really like working through the third loop because I find that this is quite an elastic stitch, especially for crochet. And I find that it provides good coverage, so it's not very see-through, as you can see. And then what happens by working into the third loop, you are kind of forcing the braiding to alternate sides, just like here. So you can see braids, braids. I'm going to repeat working half double crochets through the third loop only. For myself, okay, for this original pattern, I worked 35 rows of 27 stitches. The 27 stitches was just like a little bit too short on me. It didn't cover. I think I probably needed only like 20 to 25 rows, honestly, because as this was stretched out over my body, the backs were basically touching each other, which makes the corset back kind of useless. So I'm personally probably going to work between 20 to 25 rows of 35 stitches. As for like how to measure this, essentially you want this panel to be big enough to cover what needs to be covered. I would probably say to err on the slightly larger side, especially just because this is kind of a skimpy lip top. Honestly, you want this panel to start like just behind your armpit, like right back here, so that you can actually have the tight lacing corset style, you know, do its thing. And then you're gonna create several more rows. It'd probably come up to like here-ish, working the 35, which is probably like about center of boob. And then from there, you're gonna start making decreases to this panel. As you can see, with this, I created decreases as you went towards the neck. I'll show you how to make the decreases. So I've made 25 rows so far. In terms of measurements, that's approximately 7 inches. And now I'm gonna start decreasing. So basically what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna make a row of decreases, and with the rows of decreases, I'm creating a decrease in the beginning of my row as well as the end of my row. So with my decreases, I'm gonna create a row of a decrease and then one row no decrease and then another row of decrease and then another row of no decrease. So I'm alternating the rows of decreases. If you wanna modify this because the decreases are occurring too slowly or they're occurring too quickly, you can always, you know, add more rows in between your decreases, or you can take out the rows in between decreases altogether and just work rows of decreases, if that makes sense. So let me show you how to do the decrease. So at this point, I've changed to and turned my work. And now I'm gonna start with a yarn over on my hook, and I'm gonna insert my hook into the first third loop only that I see. Yarn over and pull up that yarn over. Insert your hook into the second stitch, second third loop only. Yarn over and pull that yarn over up. You should have 4 loops on your hook now. And then yarn over and pull through all 4 loops. So you've just now decreased by 1 stitch count. And then you are gonna go ahead and continue out your row as per usual. You're gonna keep working your half double crochet through the third loop only as per usual until the last 2 stitches on your row. Okay, so now I'm at the last 2 stitches on my row. And again, I'm gonna start with a yarn over, insert my hook into that third loop, yarn over and pull up. And then I'm going to insert my hook into the very last stitch of my row, yarn over and pull up. So you should have 4 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through all 4. Chain 2, turn your work. And so for me, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to be working rows with no decreases in between all the rows of decreases that I've created. That creates for like a very gradual decrease, as you can see here. But if this also might be a modification that I'm gonna have to make for my best friend's top. If that decrease is working up too slowly and you're finding difficulty with like sizing, then what you could do is completely skip the rows in between the decreases and just continue working rows of decreases for every single row. If it's decreasing too quickly for you, then I would suggest putting more rows of no decreases in between your rows of decreases. But this is what the decreases look like when you are creating 1 row in between every row of decrease. I'm gonna go ahead and continue making all of my decreases until I have decreased my stitch count from my original 35 to 15 stitches. I'm currently just creating rows of 15 stitches until this comfortably wraps around my neck. And then the other key component of it is, because this is going to be something that we like slip on and off right off of our heads, this, when it wraps around, the hole that it makes should be large enough to fit over, so you can just slide it on and off. Also, I FaceTimed my best friend because I showed her a video and I was like, are you sure about these measurements, girl? Like, I know you got a big chest, but holy shit, this is kind of really big. And then she was like, that does not look right, and determined that I'm about 3 to 4 inches too large right now, so it's going to be closer to like this, which makes a lot more sense. I think I'm going to create approximately somewhere between 60 to 70 rows of the 15 stitches in order to comfortably wrap that all the way around, and then have it have enough like neck hole space. So I have crocheted approximately 75 rows of 15 stitches, and I want to show you how I measure it. So basically, I know that this is gonna be like about here, right? This big panel's gotta cover up a titty. And then you wrap around. Essentially, you wanna create the rows of 15. When I'm changing the size up for my best friend's top, I might make her strap like a little bit bigger so that it's not like a strange difference in sizing. If and when you seam the sides of your halter neck together, just like so, that you can still, take it off. You want to make sure it's big enough to do that, or long enough to do that, that it'll wrap around. Essentially, now I'm going to make increases so that I return to the normal length, or the original length, and it's going to be like a mirror of this panel, right? So we decreased and now we're going to increase in order to get back to our original stitch count, which for myself is 35. For my best friends, I don't know. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and chain 2. And still working into the 3rd loop only. The first and last stitches I'm going to create increases. And to create an increase, you're just going to insert not 1, but 2 stitches into that first and last stitch on your row. So if you're like doing a sanity check and you are like actually individually counting out stitches, what you should find is that your stitch count increases by 2 every time you do an increase, and every time you did a decrease, it decreased by 2. And then in this very last stitch, I'm going to go ahead and insert 2 half double crochets, chain 2, turn my work, and then for this next row, I'm just going to work a regular row, no decreases, no increases, no nothing, and then continue alternating until you reach back to your original stitch count. Okie dokie, artichokes, I have officially increased back to my original stitch count, which is 35 for myself, and from here, I'm just going to create the same number of rows that I created on this side of my panel, which I believe was 25. This is all we're looking at so far. I'm just gonna cross over, and then you're gonna seam it together here, and then you're gonna have a sexy little cross wrap top. So at this point, I have now completed my last 25 rows of 35 stitches, and we are now ready to make the finishing details and seam the panel together so that, you know, it's cross wrapped. So what I'm going to do first is I am going to create the sort of mesh stitch on the sides of these panels here for the corset back. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and chain 3, so 1, 2, 3. In my first stitch, I'm going to go ahead and give myself a double crochet. So to do a double crochet, you're going to start off with a yarn over, insert your hook into that first stitch, yarn over and pull up, yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and then pull through the last 2 loops on your hook. And now chain 1. You're going to skip your next stitch and into the next one, insert your hook and create a double crochet. chain 1, skip into the next stitch, double crochet, chain 1, skip, next stitch, double crochet. You're just going to repeat this for the length of your panel. And then now I only have one last stitch here, and I am going to insert 3 half double crochets into this corner because I am now rounding out my corner, and I am going to create a half double crochet border all around the length of my top, all the way around until I get to this other side in which I can make the double crochet mesh stitch again. Now this half double crochet border is kind of optional. I personally find that doing these like single crochet, half double crochet type of borders around the edge of your panel kind of hides some of the bumpiness and potential unevenness. Anyways, I'm going to go into the side of my rows here and create my little border. Now, normally when I am suggesting that you work into the sides of your rows like this, I would suggest that you work underneath at least 2 strands of yarn. However, because what we're doing right now is just creating a border, I don't think that that's incredibly necessary. So I'm going to go ahead and continue my half double crochet border all the way around. And then in this corner, in order to like round corners, I just insert 3 half double crochet stitches into the same space. And then I'm going to create my double crochet mesh stitch off of this and then continue my half double crochet all the way around the other edge of my border. So I'm going to go ahead and continue that, and then I'll show you how we make this middle crossover seam. I have now completed my half double crochet border all the way around and my DC mesh stitch for the corset backing as well. I have now wrapped it around my body, and where I'm gonna start making some pins or marking out with some pins, I've heard of some people using earrings, which I think is genius. You are gonna now kind of mark out where you want the halter neck straps to be seamed together. And now keep in mind that when you are seaming this together, you want to make sure that this neck hole is going to be big enough to actually fit your neck. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of like approximate where I want things to be connected. So you're going to want to pin it together, and then from here, make sure that you can actually slide this off of yourself. So with crochet, clothes and garments in general, they tend to stretch out over time. So if it's a little snug, that's okay. Actually, that's kind of ideal. You want it to be slightly snug, like you kind of want it to be, you know that your makeup is going to rub off on the neckline kind of snug. But at this point, we are now going to create a slip stitch seam around our border in order to get to seaming this portion here. I'm going to show you what I mean. You like how I did my lashes today? I can't wait till my best friend gets in town because she's so good at makeup. She used to work at Sephora, and like she taught me everything that I know about makeup, in all honesty, which not a lot, but she taught me everything I know. From here, once you have at least like one of the corners down, you can align this edge with a row on this other side of the panel right here, right? So I'm aligning this edge with this row, and I'm going to make sure that that gets seamed down just like that. Then I'm going to go ahead and kind of align this edge. So I know I'm kind of working off of this row right here. Align that corner to this stitch. And then following the row to the corner, and then making sure that everything is aligning. The last stitch that I worked was this corner. I made 3 half double crochets in order to round out this corner. And then I'm going to slip stitch into the double crochet stitch right here. This is what the end of your border row should be looking like. And now, in order to get my yarn all the way up here, in order to seam everything together without having to break my yarn, you could honestly just break your yarn now and then go ahead and just take a sewing needle and some thread and just sew together. But I don't like breaking my yarn, and I try to avoid it as much as possible. What I'm gonna do instead, So from here, I am just gonna go into every single stitch and create a very loose tension slip stitch. I am like really not tugging on my working yarn whatsoever. I am being very loosey-goosey with it, but I am going ahead and slip stitching into all of my stitches. I find that this is like one of my favorite methods of bringing my yarn to a different place, or a different part of my garment that I want to utilize some slip stitch seaming methods, because the slip stitch seam doesn't add a whole ton of height, as you can see, but it does allow for like a nice crisp border. So I'm gonna go ahead and continue slip stitch seaming all the way until I get to right here, right? Because I'll follow slip stitch, slip stitch, slip stitch, and then I'll show you how I seam this side together, and then will slip stitch, slip stitch, slip stitch, seam that together, slip stitch, all the way back around, and then slip stitch, seam that together, and then you'll slip stitch, seam, and then you'll be done. Now I'm going to go ahead and insert my hook into the stitch where my pin is coming from. And I am going to actually work into this bump or this row. This is another reason why I used this particular stitch. I think it's really great for seaming things together. And so I'm going to go into this first little bit that I see here, which is the first little braid that's obvious to me on this row. And then I'm gonna go ahead and yarn over and just pull that yarn over up, all the way up. And then going into my next stitch right here, if I were to go 1-to-1 on every stitch, I would very quickly run out of stitches on top right here. But so instead what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna skip this next braid here, and then I'm gonna go into the next one, and then yarn over, pull that up. Remembering to keep quite a loose tension here. So I'm gonna go into my next stitch, skipping this stitch on this side, going into the next one, slip stitching, skip, 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 skip. I'm going to continue working just like so, and then I'm going to just go ahead and take out that next stitch marker, but I'm going to go into my last little stitch here, into this stitch here, yarn over and pull up. So as you can see, the slip stitch braiding is pretty loose, which is good. We don't want it to be too tight, because if it gets really, really tight, if you tend to have really tight tension like me, and you seam this pretty tightly together, it can create kind of awkward bunching here. So I would really try, if you're really struggling with loosening up your tension, try stretching out your hands. You might be just a little bit too tense, or you can switch to a larger hook size. And then as you can see from the right side, we don't see any super obvious seaming. There's a bit of a dent, but I'm gonna call it a day on that one. And I am gonna go ahead and slip stitch seam. So I should follow the sort of bottom edge of my halter neck. Down, 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 down. I'll meet you back up in order to seam this portion together. At this point, I really prefer working into the rows here, so I'm gonna try to align this the best I can, even though for right here I kind of did it a little bit closer to this braiding on this other side right here. But anyways, I am gonna first insert my hook into this side stitch, side to the row I'm gonna be working on, and I'm gonna go into my next stitch, and then I'm going to be going into my next stitch here in my row that I have been creating slip stitches. And at this point, it might be a little bit easier if you kind of fold this flap over I'm actually just gonna go ahead and like almost punch my hook through my my half double crochets here, so it's reaching the other side. And then I'm gonna go ahead and slip stitch, seam it all together. And again, you're gonna have to skip a couple of rows or skip a couple of stitches on this side right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and skip a couple of stitches, but trying to remain in the same line of like where I'm punching my holes through. And then I'm gonna go into this stitch, yarn over, and then slip stitch it up. So again, skipping a couple of stitches. Oh, looks like I already started kind of going through this stitch. There we go. You just continue creating this row of slip stitches. Sometimes you'll lose it, that's okay. The only thing to keep in mind really is that when you pick up like a loop again after you left it, when you're tightening it back on your hook, make sure that the part of the yarn that's tightening is closest to you. As you can see, that side's the one that's tightening, and it's closest to me. And I'm just gonna continue doing this and then create slip stitches all the way down, all the way down, all the way down until I get to this part of our cross, in which I'm gonna slip stitch seam this together. And then I'm gonna immediately go ahead and slip stitch this side together, which will then make sure that all 4 edges of our square where our cross top wrap is wrapping, they're all seamed down and secured. Okay, so you can start seeing like the seam around the square, right? And so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna round this corner and seam this side together. What I'm gonna do to make that a little bit easier for myself is reach out my yarn so that it's no longer like twisted in the hood, or not the hood, but the neck, whatever, you get it. And now I'm gonna kind of twist my work so that it's facing me in a good direction, and going ahead and inserting my hook and connecting this as I see fit. And then once I'm done with this, I'm gonna go ahead and then cut my yarn and weave that end in. And then we're gonna create our fun little chain for our corset back. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut that. As you can see, there's your cross halter neck and then the cross for the top. So now let me show you how to create the chain. For the chain, I am going to make a foundation single crochet chain. And in order to make a foundation single crochet chain, you're going to start off with your slip knot. And then go ahead and chain 2, so 1, 2. And then into the very first chain, through the front and the back loops here, you're gonna give yourself a yarn over, pull up that yarn over, pull through that first loop in order to make a loop. And now yarn over and then pull through 2, finishing off your single crochet. Now to make the next little chain, you're gonna insert your hook into the front and back loops of like that previous loop that you created. Yarn over, pull up, yarn over, make your loop, yarn over, go through 2. Again, insert, yarn over, pull up, yarn over, make a loop, yarn over, finish that loop, or stitch. And so I'm going to continue repeating this until I have a very, very long chain, which luckily I already have. Okay, so folded in half, this is approximately 56 inches, so that would be what, 112 total? I'm currently looking at the front. I am looking at the neckline here that we created, and at this point I'm gonna start creating my hood. So I'm going to make a slip knot And I'm gonna attach it right here in the center where like that V-neck neckline is. And then go ahead and loop up, and 1, 2, 3. And then into the same stitch, I'm gonna go ahead and give myself a double crochet. And then in the next stitch, I am gonna go ahead and insert 2 double crochets. So 1, 2. And then in the next stitch, I'm gonna do 1 double crochet. And to make a double crochet, you're gonna start off with a yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over and pull up, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over and pull through the last 2 loops. So I'm gonna continue alternating where I insert increases. So as you can see, I start off with 1 and then I do 2, 1, 2, 1, and then this would be 2, and then 1, and then 2. And I'm just going to continue making my double crochet stitches all the way around until I get to the other side of the neckline. Also, I'm going to go ahead and mark out my very first stitch that I created with a little bobby pin or stitch marker. And yeah, I'll be back. I ended my row with 2 double crochet stitches right here. And now I am going to take out my little stitch marker and slip stitch my work together, chain 2, and now you're gonna turn your work. So turn your work so you're kind of looking at the inside of your hoodie. And now from here, you are going to go ahead into all the double crochet stitches that you made previously and just make double crochet stitches in all your double crochet stitches that you made previously. And you are not going to create any increases or decreases. You're just going to continue working this portion. This portion is going to be like the sort of part around your neck, almost like a cowl neck, where it's just going to be relaxed and like just kind of falls. I'm just going to go ahead and create 10-ish rows just like this, where I'm just creating rows and rows and rows of double crochet, no increases, no decreases, all the way back around. And then once I get back to this center here, I'm going to chain 3, turn my work, and then go back around the other way. Continue doing so for about 10 rows. If you want the cowl neck portion to be a little bit bigger, then go ahead and work more rows. If you don't want it to be as big, then you can work fewer rows. I have now reached back to my very first stitch that I made here. So I'm going to go ahead and slip stitch it all together. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3. Turn my work. And then continue creating your double crochet stitches in all the stitches. I'm going to keep going, and then I'll meet you back up once I'm done with like the neck portion of my hoodie, and then I'll show you how we start to shape the hood. Okie dokie, so I've now created 10 rows of double crochet, as you can see, with slip stitches in between. Now we are no longer going to be slip stitching the sides together here in the front. Instead, I've completed my last double crochet, and I'm gonna go ahead and slip stitch into the first stitch here. And now I'm gonna chain 3, just like normal, and turn my work. At this point, I'm gonna start kind of like creating some decreases in order to frame around my head very well. So to make a double crochet stitch decrease, what I'm gonna do is start off with a yarn over on my hook, insert my hook into the very first stitch, yarn over and pull up, and then I'm going to insert my hook into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up, and then yarn over and pull through the first 3 loops on your hook, yarn over and then pull through the last 2 loops on your hook. So you've now just created a double crochet decrease. And now I'm going to go ahead and continue creating my double crochets all the way around until I get to my last 2 stitches on this row, in which I'm going to create yet another decrease. So we're going to start decreasing our work. So we are now at the last 2 stitches of our row, and I'm going to create yet another decrease. So yarning over and inserting my hook, yarn over and pull up, and then go ahead and insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up, yarn over and pull through the first 3 loops on your hook, and then yarn over, pull through the last 2 loops on your hook. Now at this point, I am not going to slip stitch, and I'm instead just going to chain 3 and turn my work. And then from here, I'm going to create 2 to 3 more rows of decreases. I haven't really decided yet. But you can always alter this, do fewer or more rows of decreases, just depending on your personal preference. But I'm going to go ahead and insert my hook into the first 2 stitches to create my decrease, and then working my double crochet stitches as normal all the way around until the last 2 stitches here, in which I'm going to create another decrease. So I've created, I believe, 1, 2, 3, 4 rows using the decreases, or making the decreases at the front center. And now I am just going to continue creating enough rows of just double crochet, no slip stitches, until this hood is large enough to actually cover my head and fit comfortably. I'll let you know how many rows I end up working. But yeah, I'm just gonna work rows and rows and rows of double crochet. And then I'll show you how I seam the rows together in order to create more of like a curved head. So this hood is very, very oversized and very large. As you can see, I created 25 rows in total. And now what I'm doing is I am folding my hood in half and then marking out the halfway point approximately, with a little stitch marker. Now I'm going to continue working double crochet stitches all the way till about 2 stitches before my stitch marker. Okay, so now I'm at 2 stitches before my stitch marker right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a double crochet decrease in these last 2 stitches, chain 3, and then turn my work. And I'm going to start off with a decrease. So making a double crochet decrease in those first 2 stitches, and then I'm going to continue creating my double crochet stitches as per usual down the rest of the row. And then I'm going to continue creating a couple more rows where I create double crochet decreases at this point right here. This is to create the curvature so that you don't have a strangely pointed hood. So I'm gonna go ahead and continue doing that, and then for this side you would just attach the yarn up here again, and then create decreases here, and then work the rest of your row as normal. So I ended up doing about 5 rows where I made the decreases right here, right before my center stitch. And now I'm gonna go ahead and make a slip knot and attach my yarn to the opposite side, essentially. So I'm gonna go ahead and attach my yarn at where my stitch marker was, right here. So right next to all those decreases that we did. And I did 5 rows. Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and start off with a chain of 3, and then yet again we are going to create decreases just right here at the center, and you're going to again make however many rows that you made with this decrease. So I did 5 rows, so I'm going to make 5 rows making decreases here near the center, and then we're going to slip stitch seam everything together. So this is a couple days after the rave. I have already worn this. I'll tell you all about what happened, but I realized I kind of forgot to film the slip stitch seaming of my 2 sides of my hood portion together. So this is after I've made all of my rows of decreases, and I am looking at the inside or the wrong side of my work. And essentially all you are gonna do, you're gonna stack the sides of your hood together and slip stitch seam it all shut. So insert your hook through corresponding stitches on either side of the hood, yarn over, and then pull that yarn over up. Try not to do this slip stitch seaming super tightly, because if you do, it may end up causing like a weird bunching here, whereas you can see here that it's not super tightly done. So I made my best friend a matching black top, and for reference, I wear like an X small. I'm like a B cup in terms of like bra cup sizing, whereas my friend probably wears more like a medium size, maybe to a large, and she has closer to like a D cup. And really the pattern was basically the same, except for a couple of alterations. For her top, I basically added 10 stitches and 10 rows to every measurement that I had here. For instance, in my top, I decreased my stitch count from 35 to 15, right, to do the neck portion. For hers, it was started at 45, and then I decreased it down to 25 stitches for the neck portion. Also, another thing that I thought was really interesting, and I felt like I was like really learning about garment construction and sizing, like grading, was that with this more like rectangular panel, particularly on the top portion towards, you know, like your armpits, I actually had to do a row of slip stitches along this top edge just in order to tighten it up a little bit more, because there was a little bit of gapping here. So if you were experiencing a little bit of gapping, then the fit is just not like super tight on you. What I would recommend is doing like a row of slip stitches that'll create it to be a little bit tighter. And then with that row of slip stitches, go ahead and have like a relatively tight tension as you do that. Anyways, for this, you're really just going to continue creating slip stitch seams all the way down, and then even on like the sides of the decreased part of the hood. Ta-da! That's what the outside of the hood looks like after it's all seamed up. Yeah, let me just tell you my thoughts, my reflections about North Coast. So basically, this was my first rave festival raving experience. I had overall really good time, really good experience. I think I would give it an overall rating like 8 out of 10. Honestly, like we were drunk, we were having a good vibe, like the weather was perfect because it has been super humid and muggy out here in Chicago for the past couple of weeks. We walked around and saw a bunch of the different stages, but my bestie and I both really loved the bass stage. I feel like the bass stage was really just so fun because the bass was so loud, like just no thoughts, only dancing, like only vibes. You could like feel vibrations in your chest. I felt like I could feel the vibrations in my nose hairs. I will say that my least favorite part about the festival was the men. I swear, like every interaction that we had with a girl or like a woman, it was like really fun, it was really chill. But then like every man, if we made eye contact with them for more than like 5 seconds, like they immediately were asking us for our Instagrams. And like both my best friend and I are in monogamous long-term relationships, and we were just like not interested. But also, I don't know, like I feel like if I were to go to a rave again, I would definitely want to go with a big group of friends, like a big group, or at least a man, like a singular man, because we did feel like kind of unsafe with a lot of the guys in the area. We eventually made our way to the main stage, and we were at the main stage for the last 3 performances of the night, and we had made our way up pretty far up in the crowd, like pretty close to the stage. And at some point, like we were kind of surrounded by groups of men. Legitimately, I checked my phone and there was only like 15 minutes left in the evening. And this guy started hooking his fingers like underneath my crochet top and like pulling me in towards him. And then I have sharp little elbows, so I was like elbowing him out of the way. But then he started hooking his fingers, his grubby little fingers, into my skirt and pulling me towards him. And so I kept elbowing him. And I think my best friend at that point was just like, what's going on? And kind of noticed what was happening. And so she switched positions with me. But then he did the exact same thing to her, but instead like he like wrapped his arm around her waist and like started tugging her towards him. And I was just like, oh, hell no, like he's not doing this to my bestie. And so I switched positions back with her. And then I was like trying to just shimmy our way through the crowd, like towards the side barricade and just like away from this guy in general. But then this guy was like following us through the crowd. And he eventually like reached under my skirt and grabbed my left butt cheek and just started groping it. And then I elbowed him really, really hard in the gut. And then we like hid our way, like we shimmied our way and hid behind this larger group of friends. And there were a couple girls in there that like we kind of felt safer around. And so we were just dancing with them, had a good night, wrapped up. But then like a couple of guys that were next to us, literally in the last 5 minutes, like as the last set was wrapping up, they were like, what's your Instagram? What's your Instagram? They were hitting on us. It was just like really uncomfortable. So the last 15 minutes or so was not the most fun. And unfortunately, like the not fun part was how we ended the night. I'm trying not to focus on that part too much. And instead just focus on the good parts. But anyways, I hope you guys really liked this tutorial. I hope you guys are able to make cute little crossover, cross wrap top for whatever events that you might have, whether it be EDM or you just want to wear this. Let me know any questions that you have about the construction of this top in the comments below. Special thank you to my patrons. Thank you for supporting me over on Patreon. I really appreciate it. If you would like to support me over there, you can get access to my supply list. You can get access to written patterns every month, etc., etc. I hope you guys are all having a really great day, and I'll talk to you later. I'll see you later. I'm so tired.